Hello, I'm Theresa Giorza and I greet you from Johannesburg, South Africa. Inspired by Karen Barrad's critical posthumanism and Donna Haraway's composting, I visit a vignette from a piece of autographical research to enact a disruption and a folding of sequential time in the micro and macro worlds of a preschool site bordering a city park. Johannesburg as a settlement began with the discovery of gold on a Highveld farm in 1886. Within the space of one single year, this Highveld plateau was turned into a swarming concentration of human burrowing, setting in motion reverberations across space and time. Global trade in minerals led rapid modernist development, and Johannesburg became a boomtown. Colonial and apartheid governments, in alliance with global capital, extracted mineral wealth for over a century. And despite a transition to a non-racial democracy in 1994, many of the same extractive and exploitative relations persist. City parks formed part of the earliest city planning projects. Many of the parks laid out for the purposes of recreating a European lifestyle for the colonies still prevail today, but with important differences. There is ongoing conflict and contestation between city parks management and park users. Official views about urban space are at odds with the demands and desires of many current city dwellers. A research project carried out with a group of 5-year-olds in an inner city preschool in Johannesburg raised questions about how public space is conceptualized and managed with regard to this particular constituency of younger city dwellers. Autography as a methodology allows a cross-contamination of pedagogy, research, and creativity through sensory and affective noticing. Karen Barrad's theory of agential realism supports this merging of self with the worlds and entangles researcher with researched. The inner city suburb I worked in was historically designated as a white area under apartheid. Since its establishment in the late 1800s, the suburb has always been a place of arrival for immigrants, as it still remains. This image features the same city park as it was in 1985. Its pasts haunt its present. The class of reception year children in this study came with diverse languages and backgrounds, predominantly from indigenous South African and neighboring African national communities. They are co-researchers with me and their teacher in their interactive learning with their environment. Interaction is a Barradian term that undoes notions of fixed identity. In any phenomenon, subject and object are mutually affecting and co-producing one another. In my study, I explored how children and the learning environment co-constitute one another in ever-changing relations and events. Critical posthumanism positions us humans alongside, on a par, and among the other living and non-living beings, objects, and forces that co-create our realities, a compost pile, according to Haraway. One of these interactive forces is time, which we are accustomed to treating as a relentless and one-directional given. According to Barrad, our histories and our imagined futures are folded into the present and are part of what constitutes our experience or reality. Hers is a relational ontology, which recognizes the ethical demands that these powerful and very particular connections make. Recognizing our relations and our differences render us able to respond in ethical ways, hence responsibility. So what happens when we think together with the park and its pasts, presents, and futures in an ethically relational way? On a visit to the park, the children found a small tree sapling growing at the base of a large plane tree. They immediately identified this tree as small like them and deserving of love and attention. They wanted their picture taken with it and posed alongside it. The tree appeared in a number of children's drawings. On a subsequent visit, though, we found that the small tree had been cut, mown down in the routine grass cutting done by parks management. A palpable sadness flowed between and amongst the company of children and the little tree. A response of care sent ripples across the collaborative connection shared with the little tree, their friends, the wider community of the park, their drawings, the grass, and my camera that they made sure was recording the event. All of these interacting parts have a distributed agency and are all active participants in the world's becoming. The small tree is not a mute, passive object of human knowledge to be discovered, experimented on, and understood in a dualistic Cartesian sense. The children and the tree are interacting parts of the world, and this particular phenomenon, its material and its meaning, a nature culture's reality in which sensory connection is central. This park is alive. It offers encounters with the organic and the ecological, including creatures like bees, ants, caterpillars, and rats. But it is managed and controlled as a part of a system of management with particular notions of order, control, beauty, and functionality, foregrounding certain stories and erasing others. Grass, and more specifically lawn, is part of our long and vibrant history as a city. Lawn exerts its colonial presence on the Highveld as part of the purposeful invention of urban leisure, sport, and recreation. This space is not a food garden, nor is it a muti garden for traditional medicine. It is a recreational facility where the gymnastic and play equipment and alien lawn variety invite particular actions: swinging, climbing, running, rolling, somersaulting, and in so doing co-constitutes modern urban children in parks. But these children are constantly called by the lively materiality of the park, and they defy this construction. I follow their lead and begin to notice more details. I notice the indigenous clover among and between the grass, and this company of ants dragging away a leftover piece of pup. The so-called weed is taking over the lawn. Ants are too small to fence out and can go too deep to poison. The perfection of the colonial park is being undone. There is a conflict between the mowing and the tidying and the forces that constantly contest it. A different rhythm emerges. Macro and micro worlds are entangled. The colonial structures of order and planning are undone by plucky weeds and subterranean insects. This is the rhythm of a multi-species engagement, and my co-researcher's ethical response of care challenges accepted, inherited, progressive narratives that envisage schools and parks as enabling and functional environments for healthy, normal, appropriate development, learning and improvement of autonomous self-regulating individuals. The little tree appeared repeatedly in the images generated by the children, showing how much it mattered. This incident made visible the exclusion of the children from the right to care for and make choices about their learning space. The children shared their sense of the tree's subjectivity entangled with their own, not human, but living like them, managed and in a controlled setting with human purposes and agendas of progress. Their place in school and the tree's place in the park, always already at risk of being swept aside in the more important grand scheme of progress and development. People who help us is a theme covered in the South African Life Skills curriculum for grade R. And here, the custodians of the park could have been said to have been found wanting. The park and the city constructs children in particular ways. They are kept in the confines of schooling so that their presence in the materiality of the world is minimal. Thinking with the park, it is clear that a future is already threaded through the now. Parks are planned with a particular conception of citizen and of child. But what other possible futures may there be? The students demanding free access to education in the Roads Must Fall and Fees Must Fall uprisings of 2016 raised issues that had been left unaddressed since the dawn of our democracy. For the early childhood education sector, it raised the alarm bells. How much more urgent was free, universal early childhood education? Morris and Haynes, among others, have argued that children have long been excluded from the Enlightenment categories of human and democratic citizen. Here was yet another example of this. What are the possibilities for a different set of relationships? Land designated as public open space is managed by a team of city park managers. Each manager oversees between 20 and 120 different urban spaces, which may be a mix of developed parks, undeveloped parks, conservancies, and nature reserves. Beni Gabafu, 2018. Each manager manages a team of between 15 and 30 horticulture workers who move from site to site, cleaning, mowing, and maintaining spaces. Urban geographer Claire Beni Gabafu advocates the reconfiguration of city management relationships to create possibilities for effective co-production of public spaces through collaborative partnerships between local government and community groupings. Urban planners will be more effective partners in our fight for better early childhood services if they consider the importance of public space for urban children. Questions about land and access to land remain the central concern of the decolonizing project. Takanyang, 2012. Land hunger is an issue even for our youngest citizens. On a macro scale, democracy in South Africa has changed the city in important ways. The past laws and other race-based legislation are gone, and elected officials represent the populace through periodic election processes. However, the limits of these changes are clear in the ongoing divisions and persistent patterns of wealth and poverty that are visible on our maps. In Johannesburg, clean new cityscapes are being created to the north, while degraded mining areas and decaying inner city spaces become toxic wastelands. Most of the city's children contend with dodgy, dangerous, or otherwise inadequate play space. A multi-sensory aesthetic and an ethical responsibility on the part of my fellow participants produced an emergent and artful environmental education whose goal is the forging of careful relationships between human and more than human companions in the business of learning to live well together in our wobbly city on our troubled earth. An ontological shift is necessary from that of conventional Western science, in which nature is separate from culture and knowing is unrelated to responsibility. A critical post-humanist perspective moves the researcher from an objectified position outside of reality being studied to a place of recognition and responsibility within it. A new ethics is required to do justice to and with a generation of environmentally aware earth dwellers. Learning with the park has produced knowledge about the inseparability of systems of management from the issues of pedagogy, curriculum, and daily programs of teaching and learning. Political and ethical choices need to be made, and central to these are the images we hold of child, of pedagogy, and of land. Thank you.